Welcome to XNS Services Relayer Video Guides, a multi-episode series going over the very beginnings of what you need to get started with a relayer, all the way to powerful and complete deployments. In this episode, episode 4, we're covering identity and access management. With me today, we have Patrick.
How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well, thank you. And we also have Jay as well. How's it going?
Hey, Henry.
Awesome. Good to have you guys with me. So we can see on my screen here, we are in the IAM tab, which I'm pretty happy to be able to show off. So IAM, I can see here it's Identity and Access Management. Patrick, can you kind of tell me a bit about what this kind of means and how is this permissioning? What is this?
So the thing about IAM is it's kind of self-explanatory in the sense that it helps control the identity and access to your relayer. So in this example that you're seeing right now, you've got a developer user, obviously a section for groups, and then ultimately policies that you can assign to all of that. So you've got the granularity of being able to control an individual user and what they're able to do with individual buckets. You could apply the same kind of policies to the groups themselves and assign users to those groups. And then the policies themselves, you can think of more around the actual permissioning itself as to what those users or groups could do.
Very good. I think that was kind of a good way to kind of introduce a lot of the concepts. So IAM, from what I've been able to kind of tell, it is a pretty deep thing. There's a lot to kind of know about it. So we have some resources up here available too. So here we have bucket policies and user policies. So this is coming from AWS itself. Is that right?
Yeah, so with S3 being something that was developed by AWS, they're kind of the standard that a lot of these policies that are being created are based off of. So it would make sense that they've got a pretty robust set of documentation that covers kind of all things IAM, and like you mentioned, things surrounding permissions and access to buckets. It can be a pretty deep rabbit hole. You can be about as simplistic as you want to be with it, or about as complex as you want to get with it based off of your comfort levels. And AWS is a great place to start to learn more about IAM and just access control in general.
Super. So let's start kind of diving into it a bit. So that's right. We have already set up a user called development. We also have a group called team. Right now it just has the one member. And it's when we get over to policies that this is where things get a little bit more complex. So just before this episode, we put together something, or a sample that we're calling J sample, because it was put together by Jay here. So Jay, can you kind of explain to me, can you explain to me what we're looking at here? And then we can get into the significance of what the code actually does.
So this is what an S3 bucket policy looks like in its raw form. Policy manager that you see behind that window kind of creates these on the fly based on tick boxes you're ticking, but you can also edit it in a manual way. So this particular policy has, I think, 4 or 5 different statements in it that do different things. They expose some features that you can't do natively in the policy manager that we've provided. This first one at the top, you can see the SID is kind of a friendly name of what it's doing. This will make, if you look down below and under resource, you'll see a little variable there that has AWS username. So what this does is this gives someone full access, which is get, list, put, and delete object permissions into any bucket that matches their username and all subfolders because of the /* at the end. So this is a way to create a special policy so it's not specifically linked to one bucket. And this way you can create multiple users and they will all get access to a bucket without you needing to create a new policy for each of those buckets or each of those users. So it's a really good use case for applying the policy to a group. And then you just need to add your users into that group, whether it's your company department or whatever. So that's just that top one. And then if you scroll down a little bit, so what's happening here is all users get access to see into a shared bucket. They can list it from the root. Inside that shared bucket, they can also get every object and list further. So they'll be able to see subfolders and things like that. But you'll notice they can't put anything directly into that shared bucket. But the policy below there is another special policy where it allows users to put objects and delete objects into the shared bucket, but in a subfolder that matches their username.
I think I kind of got the gist of it, but we're going to give a demonstration in a moment. But some kind of simpler policies as well. So we have read only, read write, write only.
While you're on that policy screen, it would probably be beneficial to just click the add policy for me and show people that it doesn't have to necessarily be that complex. Like Jay was mentioning, you have those list, read, write, delete, full checkboxes that if you just need to build basic policies and don't want to get into the complexity of writing a JSON file, that the screen here will help you build these basic policies for you.
That's exactly right. So let's go with Patrick policy here, and we can create that one. It will generate for us this kind of AWS code, but we don't really need to even look at it or know what it does. If we hop back over to users, we have our development user. They've been assigned to the team group. However, we haven't assigned it any policies yet, so we're going to give it that JSample policy. If we log in quickly as development,
you'll need to create your buckets too. You actually won't be able to create a bucket as your development user, I think. You don't have a policy that's allowing the development user create bucket.
So we will create two buckets, one for our user and one called shared, which all of the users will be able to use. So if we refresh Minio, yep, they populate automatically. So we have development and in shared as well. Now, if there were other users, I would be able to see their folders. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. You'd be able to see, you can see everything in this bucket. You can get everything in this bucket, including the subfolders, but you wouldn't be able to put anything or delete anything unless it was in a folder named the same as your username.
So let's go ahead and do that. And cool. So now if we head back to just the basic shared bucket, I can see my user. And within here, I can read, write, delete, do anything that I want. Now, if I were to head back to IAM and create a second user, and all I have to do is apply this policy to you.
And just notice while you're here, there's obviously other buckets that are created that the root keys can see that the individual users, that the development user cannot see.
That's right. So right now I'm in as development, and I can only see my own personal bucket that nobody else gets to see except the admin user, and shared, which everybody gets to see. But all of these other ones that we had made previously, they are not carried over to our new development user. So log back in as J. So yeah, our J bucket is waiting for us here. This is our personal one that we can upload things to and write from, or read and write from. However, in shared, so here we can read development and what they uploaded to that shared folder. However, if we try to upload something, there we go. So what we've kind of demonstrated here, although very simplistic with just our two users, development and J, in effect, what we've kind of demonstrated is how a small team could work together to use the same cloud access point and be able to collaborate and upload their own personal productivity, be able to download and access some of their other coworkers, but with some basic protections. I think this has been kind of a really compelling example of custom S3 policy, and we will provide this for the reader to be able to replicate as well. So this is something how just a bit of custom work and kind of know-how and digging into some of these resources that we will provide as well. AWS, excellent kind of repository for that. And there are as well AWS policy generators that will be probably pretty handy. Yeah, I see a whole lot of actions here.
That's right. A lot of them are AWS specific and they're not S3 compatible specific. So the main ones that we'll be using is get, list, put, and delete. Nothing with version in it won't currently work, but we are working on that to have multiple versions of the same file. So As we introduce new features or parity with actual AWS policies, we'll have some more features that we can add in here. Currently, if you try to add, like if you were to add an additional action in here, like S3 delete object version, it'll actually fail to save the policy because it tries to apply it. It knows that it's trying to use an unsupported feature, and it'll refuse to save.
Certainly, I think the takeaway, at least that I come away with, is that the policy can be very deep if you get into it, but you can do a lot with even just a couple basic, delete object, get object, list bucket, put object, just kind of these basic building blocks. You can do a lot with that and even get some pretty powerful and practically, and useful policies for collaboration of different teams. So that's all possible with the IAM module. Thank you guys for being with me today to help go over some of the strengths and frankly why IAM is important, why people care about this, why it might be worth diving into some of the different resources on what's possible, what's not possible, and kind of be able to achieve pretty useful things with your relayer.
One extra thing that I would add is that a user doesn't necessarily need to be a person. It's also a good way to separate out your different applications, so you're not using your root keys with maybe the different S3 applications that you're using that are tying into the relayer. So that allows you, an added layer of security to be able to remove keys from maybe something that might get exploited or maybe something no longer in development. That way it doesn't affect some of the other workflows. So think of it as just another like a login password from that standpoint, where a user might need it to do it in those collaborative ways that you've just outlined, but then also maybe more high level for the different applications that you might be using to tie into that. So it's a good way of just securing your data when you're using a tool as powerful as a relayer, when you're in control of your data.
Cheers. Thank you guys very much. And I'll see you in the next episode.